June 5, 1944, England. The night before D-Day. Across southern Britain, hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers prepare for the largest amphibious invasion in history. They clean their weapons. They write letters home. They pray. At one airfield, a group of American paratroopers stands apart from the rest. Their faces are painted with streaks of brown and green. Their heads are shaved into mohawk cuts. They carry knives, grenades, explosives. They laugh, they joke, they show no fear. Other soldiers stare. Officers look away, uncomfortable. Journalists snap photographs that will become some of the most iconic images of World War II. These men are the Filthy 13, a demolition section from the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. They are not like other soldiers. They refuse to bathe. They ignore regulations. They fight among themselves. They drink. They gamble. They raise hell behind the lines. Their commanding officers have threatened them with court-martial more times than anyone can count. But when the shooting starts, when the mission is impossible, when someone needs to blow a bridge or storm a position that everyone else considers suicide, the Filthy 13 deliver. They will jump into Normandy in a few hours. They will fight across France. They will parachute into Holland. They will freeze in the forests of Bastogne. And they will survive, most of them through sheer skill, savage determination, and absolute loyalty to each other. Their story will inspire books, documentaries, and Hollywood films. But the real story, the true history of the Filthy 13 is stranger, more complex, and more remarkable than any fiction. This is that story. This is the truth behind the legend. This is the Filthy 13. To understand the Filthy 13, we must first understand the American paratrooper program of World War II, an experiment that many in the US military believed would fail. Airborne warfare was new and tested in American doctrine. The idea of dropping soldiers behind enemy lines by parachute seemed desperate, wasteful, perhaps suicidal. Paratroopers would land scattered, isolated, vulnerable. They would carry limited ammunition and no heavy weapons. They would face enemies who had armored support, artillery, and the advantage of prepared positions. But the potential was undeniable. Paratroopers could seize bridges before they were blown. They could disrupt enemy communications. They could create chaos in rear areas, forcing defenders to fight on multiple fronts. In 1940, the US Army authorized the creation of a test platoon at Fort Benning, Georgia. The volunteers came from existing infantry units, men looking for adventure, extra pay, or simply a challenge. The training was brutal. Many washed out, but those who survived became the nucleus of America's airborne forces. By 1942, entire divisions were being formed. The 82nd Airborne, the 101st Airborne. These were not ordinary divisions. They were elite, volunteer units, composed of men willing to jump from aircraft into combat. The 101st Airborne Division was activated in August 1942 at Camp Claiborne, Louisiana. Its motto, Rendezvous with Destiny. Its mission, to spearhead the invasion of Europe. Within the 101st, several Parachute Infantry Regiments were organized. One of these was the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, commanded by Colonel Robert Sink. The 506th would become one of the most storied units of the war, but in 1942, it was just another collection of young men learning to jump, learning to fight, learning to survive. Among those men was a troublemaker from Oklahoma named Jake McNiece. McNiece was Choctaw, raised in poverty during the Depression, toughened by years of hard labor and harder living. He had joined the Army in 1942. Drawn by the extra pay, paratroopers received $50 a month on top of base salary. He had no particular love for military discipline. He had no interest in following orders he considered stupid. But he could jump, he could fight, and he had a natural gift for leading men who thought like he did. McNiece was assigned to the headquarters company of the 1st Battalion, 506th Pier. Within that company, He became part of the demolition section, a specialized unit trained to destroy bridges, obstacles, and fortifications using explosives. Demolition work required technical skill, physical courage, and a certain disregard for personal safety. You worked with unstable materials. You operated close to enemy positions. You had seconds to place charges correctly, or the mission failed and you died. McNiece excelled at it. The 506th began its training at Camp Toccoa, Georgia. In the summer of 1942, Toccoa was hell. The base sat in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and the training regimen was designed to break men. Daily runs up Curry Mountain, a 3-mile climb that left soldiers vomiting and collapsing. Endless physical conditioning, jump training from towers and aircraft. Forced marches with full equipment in the southern heat. The officers wanted men who could endure anything. They wanted soldiers who would jump into the unknown without hesitation. What they got, in some cases, were men who decided that, if they could survive Currahee, they could survive anything, including the wrath of their commanding officers. McNiece began gathering like-minded men around him, men who were skilled, fearless, and utterly contemptuous of military formality. Men who believed that what mattered was combat effectiveness, not spit-shined boots. Men who would follow McNiece into hell, but who would not salute an officer they didn't respect. The core group formed slowly. Jack Womer, a tough kid from Pennsylvania. Robert Cohn, a demolitions expert. John Agnew, quiet but deadly. Charles Prado, always ready for a fight. Joe Oleskovich, massive and unbreakable. These men, and about a dozen others, became McNiece's crew. They trained together. They fought together, sometimes against each other, sometimes against other units, always against the rules. They were good at their jobs, exceptionally good. They could place charges faster and more accurately than any other demolition team. They could navigate by compass across unfamiliar terrain. They could operate independently, without supervision, and complete missions that required initiative and courage, but they were terrible soldiers by conventional standards. They missed formations. They ignored uniform regulations. They drank heavily when off duty. They brawled in bars. They showed open disrespect to officers they considered incompetent. And they had no interest whatsoever in personal hygiene. By the time the 506 shipped out to England in 1943, McNiece's demolition section had earned a reputation. Officers hated them. NCOs wanted them court-martialed. Other paratroopers viewed them with a mixture of disgust and awe. But no one could deny their effectiveness, and in war, effectiveness is what matters. The stage was set for the Filthy 13 to become a legend. The nickname came from their lifestyle. Most soldiers, even in the harsh conditions of training and deployment, made an effort to stay clean. They shaved. They bathed when facilities were available. They laundered their uniforms. Maintaining hygiene was part of discipline, part of self-respect, part of keeping morale high. ANC single quotes S demolition section didn't care. They rarely bathed. Some claimed it was deliberate, that staying dirty made them tougher, more connected to the earth, more like warriors. Others said it was simple laziness. The truth was probably a combination. Their uniforms were caked with mud and sweat. Their barracks reeked. Other soldiers complained. Officers ordered them to clean up. They ignored the orders. Inspections became confrontations. McNiece would stand at attention, filthy, defiant, while officers threatened punishment. He would salute eventually and walk away. Nothing changed. The group became known as McNiece's Filthy 13. The number wasn't always exact. Membership fluctuated, and the actual count varied between 12 and 17 men at different times. But the name stuck. They wore it as a badge of honor. Because beneath the dirt, beneath the insubordination, the Filthy 13 were bound by something deeper than military discipline. They were bound by loyalty, absolute, unshakable loyalty to each other. In a unit where men jumped from aircraft into enemy fire, where survival depended on trusting the man beside you, loyalty was everything. The Filthy 13 would fight for each other in ways They would never fight for the abstract ideals of duty or country. They would die for each other. And before the war ended, some of them would. Their commander, Colonel Robert Sink, faced a dilemma. By every conventional measure, the filthy 13 should have been discharged, court-martialed, or reassigned to punishment details. They violated regulations constantly. They undermined good order and discipline. But Sink was a pragmatist. He understood that war is not fought by men who follow every rule. War is fought by men who can kill the enemy, complete the mission, and come home alive. And by that measure, the filthy 13 were among his best soldiers. They excelled in training exercises. They consistently outperformed other demolition teams. When given a mission, blow this bridge, destroy this bunker, clear this obstacle, they completed it faster and more efficiently than anyone else. Sink made a calculation. He would tolerate their behavior as long as they delivered results. He would shield them from the worst consequences of their actions. He would let McNiece lead them in his own way. But when the time came to fight, they would be unleashed. The 506th Pier arrived in England in September 1943, part of the massive build-up of Allied forces for the invasion of Europe. They were stationed at Aldbourne, a small village in Wiltshire, where they continued training now with a sense of urgency, knowing that combat was approaching. The filthy 13's reputation preceded them. British civilians kept their distance. Military police watched them closely. Other American units heard the stories, the fights, the drinking, the refusal to bathe. But they also heard other stories. Stories of men who could navigate at night without maps, who could place explosive charges in seconds, who never flinched, never panicked, never quit when the orders came down for the D-Day operation. The filthy 13 were assigned one of the most critical missions of the invasion. They would jump into Normandy ahead of the main force. They would destroy bridges to prevent German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. They would create chaos, disrupt communications, and hold key terrain until relieved. It was exactly the kind of mission they had trained for. And as the date approached, McNiece decided they needed to look the part. Spring 1944, Southern England. The invasion is coming. Everyone knows it. The question is when and where. The 101st Airborne is briefed in stages. First, general objectives. Then, specific targets. Finally, individual assignments. Security is absolute. Men are confined to base. Maps are guarded. Loose talk can mean execution as a spy. The filthy 13 learn their mission. They will parachute into the Cotentin Peninsula in the early hours of June 6th. Their primary objective is to destroy bridges and causeways near Corentin, cutting German supply routes and preventing reinforcements from reaching Utah and Omaha beaches. It is a demolition mission, their specialty, but it will be conducted in darkness, under fire, in unfamiliar territory. They will land scattered. They may be isolated for hours or days. They will face German troops who know the ground and have prepared defenses. The casualty estimates are sobering. The 101st expects to lose 30% of its men in the first 24 hours. For pathfinders and specialized units, like demolition sections, the estimates are higher. The filthy 13 accept this without comment. They have always known that jumping into combat means accepting death as a possibility. Fear is natural, but fear cannot be allowed to interfere with the mission. In the days before the jump, tension builds. Men write final letters home. They clean weapons obsessively. They check parachutes, harnesses, equipment. Some attend religious services. Others sit alone with their thoughts. And Jake McNiece decides that the filthy 13 will jump into Normandy looking like warriors. The idea comes from a conversation about Native American traditions. McNiece is Choctaw, and he knows stories of warriors preparing for battle, painting their faces, adopting symbols, performing rituals that transform them from ordinary men into fighters. He proposes that the filthy 13 shave their heads into mohawk cuts and paint their faces with camouflage grease before the jump. The response is enthusiastic. The men see it as a way to stand out, to intimidate the enemy, to mark themselves as different from ordinary soldiers. It is theatrical, yes, but theatre has power. It creates identity. It builds morale. They raid the camp barbershop and get to work, one by one. The men of the Filthy 13 have their heads shaved, leaving a strip of hair running from forehead to neck. The style is crude, uneven, done with clippers and straight razors. It looks savage, primitive, exactly the effect they want. Word spreads across the base. Other paratroopers come to watch. Some laugh, some are disgusted, some are quietly impressed. Officers react with anger. This is not regulation. This is not how American soldiers present themselves. But the invasion is hours away, and there is no time to enforce discipline. The Filthy 13 will jump as they are. On the evening of June 5th, as the men prepare to board aircraft, they complete the transformation, using camouflage grease mint for blackening faces. During night operations, they paint their faces with stripes and patterns. Brown, green, black, war paint. They look terrifying. Journalists and photographers, allowed onto the airfield to document the paratroopers' departure, are drawn to the Filthy 13. The images are too striking to ignore. Cameras click. Flash bulbs pop. The photographs will become iconic. For decades, they will be reproduced in history books, documentaries, and museums. They will define the popular image of American paratroopers on D-Day. But in the moment, the men of the Filthy 13 aren't thinking about posterity. They are thinking about the jump, about the mission, about survival. As darkness falls, they board their C-47 transport aircraft. The engines roar to life. The planes taxi to the runway. Operation Overlord has begun, and the Filthy 13 are going to war. June 6, 1944, 0100 hours. Over the English Channel, the C-47 carrying the Filthy 13 flies in formation, with hundreds of other aircraft, a massive aerial armada, heading toward the coast of Normandy. Inside the plane, the men sit in silence, weighted down by equipment. Parachutes, reserve chutes, weapons, ammunition, explosives, rations. Each man carries more than 100 pounds of gear. The flight is rough. Cloud cover is heavy. Turbulence throws the aircraft around. Some men vomit, others pray. McNiece sits near the door, watching the red light that will turn green when they reach the drop zone. They cross the French coast. Suddenly, the sky erupts. Anti-aircraft fire. Tracers arc upward in streams of light. Flak bursts around the aircraft, shaking the fuselage, tearing holes in wings and tails. German gunners have been waiting for this moment, and they fire everything they have. The C-47, carrying the Filthy 13, lurches violently. The pilot takes evasive action, diving, climbing, banking, trying to avoid the worst of the fire. But evasive maneuvers scatter the formation. Planes separate. Navigation becomes impossible. The jump master responsible for timing the drop loses his reference points. The aircraft is too low, moving too fast. Of course, the red light turns green. Go, go, go. The men hurl themselves out the door into darkness and chaos. The parachute descent should take seconds, but in the chaos of combat, everything is confused. The men can see tracers below them, muzzle flashes, fires. They hear explosions. They cannot see the ground. McNiece lands hard in a field. He rolls, collapses his chute, and takes stock. He's alive. He's unhurt, but he has no idea where he is. Around him, the night is filled with sounds of battle. Distant artillery, small arms fire, aircraft engines, and silence, the terrible silence of men who have landed and are lying still, either dead or hiding. The 101st Airborne's D-Day jump is one of the most chaotic operations of the war. The planes come in scattered, at varying altitudes and speeds. Paratroopers are dropped miles from their designated zones. Units are fragmented. Men land in flooded fields and drown, weighed down by equipment. Others land in trees, in enemy positions, in minefields. The Filthy 13 are scattered across miles of Norman countryside, McNiece begins moving cautiously, using a handheld cricket clicker to signal other American paratroopers. The cricket makes a distinctive clicking sound. One click is answered by two if the responder is friendly. It is a simple system, but in the darkness, it saves lives. Click-click, silence, click-click, a response. McNiece finds one of his men, then another. Slowly, over hours, the Filthy 13 regroup. Not all of them, some have landed miles away, some are injured, some are missing. But McNiece gathers enough men to form an effective unit, and they still have their demolitions equipment. Their mission destroying bridges near Carentan requires them to move through enemy-occupied territory. They navigate by compass and instinct, avoiding German patrols, sticking to hedgerows and ditches. The Norman bocage, the dense network of hedgerows, sunken roads, and small fields, is nightmarish terrain. Visibility is limited to meters. Every corner could hide an enemy machine gun nest. Movement is slow, exhausting, nerve-wracking. But the Filthy 13 press on. They reach one of their target bridges near dawn. German troops are nearby, but disorganized, confused by the scale of the airborne assault. The Filthy 13 move quickly. They place shaped charges on the bridge supports, wire them together, set the fuses. The explosion is massive, clean. The bridge collapses into the river. German reinforcements will have to find another route. Mission accomplished. But the fighting is just beginning. Over the next days, the Filthy 13 operate across the Normandy countryside. They ambush German patrols. They clear roadblocks. They provide demolition support for other units. They take casualties, men wounded, men separated, men who disappear and are never found. The war paint and Mohawks are long gone, washed away by rain and sweat. But the identity remains. They are still the Filthy 13, and they are still fighting. The days following D-Day are brutal for the 101st Airborne. The division is scattered across the Cotentin Peninsula, fighting to link up with forces from the beaches, securing villages, holding key terrain against German counterattacks. The Filthy 13, operating as part of the 506th PIR, 1st Battalion, are in constant action. Their role as a demolition section is they are called forward whenever obstacles need to be destroyed: bunkers, roadblocks, fortified buildings. This work is dangerous, requiring them to approach enemy positions under fire, place charges, and withdraw before detonation. They lose men. Robert Cohn, one of the original members, is killed by German machine gun fire during an assault on a fortified farmhouse. Charles Prado is wounded and evacuated. Others suffer injuries: shrapnel wounds, broken bones, concussions from explosions. But the survivors keep fighting. One engagement, near the village of Carentan, illustrates their methods. The 506th is ordered to capture a series of buildings held by German paratroopers, elite Fallschirmjäger, who are as tough and skilled as their American counterparts. The Germans have turned the buildings into strongpoints, with machine guns covering the approaches. The Filthy 13 are called forward. McNiece surveys the situation and devises a plan, while riflemen provide suppressing fire. His men will move close under cover of smoke grenades, place satchel charges against the building walls, and blow them in dots. It is textbook demolition work, but executing it under fire requires nerve. They move. Smoke grenades burst. The Germans fire blindly into the smoke. Bullets crack past. The Filthy 13 reach the buildings, slam charges against the walls, light the fuses, and sprint back. The explosions tear the walls apart. The Germans inside are killed or stunned. American infantry rush in and secure the position. The Filthy 13 move on to the next objective. This pattern repeats across Normandy. The 506 pushes inland. The Germans resist fiercely. Every village, every hedgerow, every crossroads is contested. The fighting is close range, vicious, exhausting. The Filthy 13 operate at the sharp end, always forward, always in danger. By late June, the 101st Airborne has been in continuous combat for 3 weeks. The division is exhausted, under strength, desperately in need of rest and replacements. Finally, In early July, they are pulled off the line and sent back to England to refit. The filthy 13, what's left of them, return to Airborne. They have survived Normandy. They have completed their missions. They have proven, once again, that they are among the best combat soldiers in the army. But they have paid a price. Men are dead. Men are wounded. The unit has been bled. And in a few months, they will jump again. September 17, 1944. The 101st Airborne is jumping into the Netherlands as part of Operation Market Garden Field. Marshal Bernard Montgomery's audacious plan to end the war by Christmas. The concept is bold. Airborne divisions will seize bridges across major rivers in Holland, creating a corridor for British armoured divisions to drive into Germany. If successful, the Allies will bypass the Siegfried Line, capture the Ruhr industrial region, and force German surrender. The 101st mission is to capture and hold bridges near Eindhoven and Veghel, keeping the road open for British tanks advancing from Belgium. The filthy 13, now integrated into the 506th operations, prepare for their second combat jump. They are veterans now, experienced, hardened, no longer the wild men of D-Day. They know what combat feels like. They know what it costs. The jump on September the 17th is conducted in daylight, a dramatic shift from Normandy's night chaos. The weather is clear. Visibility is excellent. The men can see the ground rushing up as they descend. German anti-aircraft fire is heavy, but less effective than at Normandy. Most of the 101st lands on or near their drop zones. The initial objectives, bridges at Sun and Bastogne, are quickly reached, but the bridge at Sun has been blown by the Germans just before American paratroopers arrive. Engineers will have to build a replacement, delaying the British armoured advance. The filthy 13 are assigned to defensive positions around Veghel, a critical town on the main highway. Their job is to hold the road open, prevent German forces from cutting the supply line, and repel any counterattacks. For the first days, resistance is light. The Dutch civilians welcome the Americans as liberators. The weather holds. Market Garden seems to be succeeding, but to the north, at Arnhem, the British 1st Airborne Division is being destroyed. The Germans are stronger than intelligence predicted. The British tanks are delayed. The entire operation is unraveling. By late September, German forces launch heavy counterattacks against the 101st positions. Panzer units, SS troops, and regular Wehrmacht infantry assault the corridor, trying to sever the Allied supply line. The fighting around Veghel becomes desperate. The filthy 13, dug in along the highway, face German armor and infantry assaults. They fight from foxholes, from buildings, from ditches. They use bazookas, grenades, rifles. They hold their positions because retreating means the entire operation collapses. The casualties are severe. John Agnew is killed by a German tank shell. Jack Womer is seriously wounded and evacuated. Others are hit by shrapnel, concussed by explosions, worn down by constant combat. McNiece is everywhere, rallying his men, calling in artillery support, coordinating with other units. He fights with the same savage intensity that has always defined him, but now tempered by the knowledge that every decision costs lives. By early October, Market Garden is acknowledged as a failure. The British did not reach Arnhem. The German defence is held. The war will not end by Christmas. The 101st Airborne is finally pulled back to France to rest and refit. They have been in continuous combat for nearly a month. The division has suffered heavy casualties. The filthy 13, once a tight-knit group of misfits, has been shattered by losses. But there is no time to mourn, no time to recover. Because in December 1944, the Germans will launch their last great offensive in the West, and the 101st Airborne will be sent to stop it. December 16, 1944, the German army launches Operation Wacht am Rhein, a massive surprise offensive through the Ardennes forest, aimed at splitting the Allied armies and capturing the port of Antwerp. The attack achieves complete tactical surprise. American units are overrun. Lines collapse. Panic spreads. Within days, German panzer divisions have penetrated 50 miles into Allied territory. The critical road junction of Bastogne, in Belgium, becomes the focal point of the battle. Whoever controls Bastogne controls the roads. The Germans need it to sustain their offensive. The Allies need it to anchor their defense. The 101st Airborne, resting in France after Market Garden, is ordered to Bastogne immediately. They will hold the town against all German attacks until relief arrives. There is no time for preparation. The division loads onto trucks in the middle of the night and drives through freezing rain toward Belgium. Many soldiers don't have winter uniforms. Some are recovering from wounds. None are prepared for what's coming. The filthy 13, what remains of them, move with the 506th Pier toward Bastogne. McNiece and his surviving men are exhausted, under strength, but still functional. They carry their demolition equipment, their weapons, and very little else. They arrive at Bastogne on December 19th. The town is already partially surrounded. German forces are closing in from all directions. The weather is turning brutal: snow, freezing temperatures, wind. The 101st digs in around the town, creating a defensive perimeter. Foxholes are scraped into frozen ground. Fields of fire are cleared. Ammunition is distributed. And then they wait. The German assault begins on December 20th. Panzer divisions, supported by infantry, attack from multiple directions. The fighting is savage. American positions are hit by artillery, tanks, and waves of German soldiers. The 101st holds day after day. The attacks continue. The weather worsens. Snow falls continuously. Temperatures drop below zero. Supply drops are impossible because of cloud cover. Food runs out. Ammunition dwindles. Medical supplies are exhausted. Wounded men freeze to death in aid stations. Frostbite becomes epidemic. Soldiers share blankets, huddle together for warmth, scavenge supplies from the dead. The filthy 13, positioned on the perimeter, endure conditions that make Normandy seem comfortable. They fight from frozen foxholes, repelling German infantry assaults, calling in artillery strikes when ammunition allows. Their survival instincts, the same instincts that made them ignore regulations, refuse to conform, live by their own rules, now keep them alive. They scavenge food from abandoned buildings. They strip clothes from dead Germans to layer against the cold. They move constantly to avoid frostbite. They refuse to surrender to despair. On December 22nd, German officers approach under a white flag and demand the surrender of Bastogne. The American commander, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, sends back a one-word reply: nuts. The siege continues. By Christmas, the situation is desperate. The 101st is surrounded, outnumbered, freezing, and running out of everything, but they still hold Bastogne. And on December 26th, elements of Patton's Third Army break through the German lines and reach the town. The siege is lifted. The Battle of the Bulge will continue 4 weeks, but Bastogne is held. The German offensive has failed. The Third Reich has exhausted its last reserves. The filthy 13 survive. Not all of them. More men are lost to combat, to frostbite, to wounds that turn fatal in the cold. But Jake McNiece and the core group endure. They have fought through Normandy, Holland, and now Belgium. They have survived everything the German army could throw at them. And the war is almost over. The filthy 13 as a cohesive unit effectively ceased to exist after Bastogne. The casualties, the transfers, the exhaustion, all had taken their toll. By early 1945, the original members were scattered. Jake McNiece remained in combat. He continued to serve with the 506th Pier, participating in the advance into Germany. He survived the war and returned to the United States, where he struggled like so many combat veterans to adjust to civilian life. He worked odd jobs, drifted, carried the weight of what he had seen and done. In later years, he gave interviews and wrote about his experiences, ensuring that the filthy 13's story was preserved. Jack Womer, wounded in Holland, recovered, and also returned home. He became one of the unit's most vocal chroniclers, writing memoirs and speaking publicly about their exploits. His accounts provide much of what we know about the Filthy 13's day-to-day life. Of the original core group, many did not survive. Some died in Normandy, others in Holland, some at Bastogne. Their names are recorded on memorials, in division histories, in the quiet grief of families who lost sons and brothers. The Filthy 13's impact extended far beyond their combat. Record. The photographs taken on the eve of D-Day showing them with Mohawks and war paint became defining images of American paratroopers. Those images were reproduced endlessly, shaping public perception of airborne soldiers as fierce, unconventional, fearless. In 1965, those images inspired the film The Dirty Dozen, directed by Robert Aldrich. The movie depicted a group of military convicts sent on a suicide mission behind German lines. It was fiction. The Filthy 13 were not convicts, and their missions were not suicidal, but the film's central concept was drawn from their story. The Dirty Dozen became a massive commercial success, cementing the idea of misfit soldiers who excel in combat. It spawned sequels, imitators, and the lasting cultural trope. But the fictionalized version obscured the reality. The Filthy 13 were not criminals. They were skilled, professional soldiers who happened to despise military bureaucracy. They were not sent on suicide missions. They were given difficult, dangerous tasks, the same tasks assigned to other elite units, and they completed them. Their refusal to conform was not nihilism. It was a statement about what mattered in war, not appearance, not regulations, but effectiveness, courage, and loyalty. They challenged the military's obsession with uniformity and demonstrated that excellence can exist outside traditional structures. Their legacy lives on in modern special operations forces, where unconventional thinking, initiative, and small unit cohesion are valued above rigid adherence to protocol. The Filthy 13 proved that warriors don't need to look like soldiers, they just need to fight like them. 4 decades after the war, the Filthy 13 remained obscure. They were a footnote in divisional histories, a curiosity remembered by veterans, but unknown to the public. What preserved their story was photography. Those iconic images from June 5, 1944, McNiece and his men with their Mohawks, their war paint, their fierce grins were filed away in military archives and newspaper morgues. Occasionally, they appeared in history books or documentaries about D-Day, usually without context, without explanation, but the images were too powerful to forget. In the 1980s and 1990s, as interest in World War II history surged, researchers began tracking down surviving members of the Filthy 13. Jake McNiece, Jack Womer, and others gave interviews. They told their stories, the brawls, the insubordination, the combat, the losses. Their accounts revealed a unit far more complex than the mythology suggested. Yes, they were misfits. Yes, they broke rules. But they were also deeply principled. They cared about their comrades. They took their missions seriously. They were not rebels for rebellion's sake. They were men who believed that substance mattered more than form. Books were written. Documentaries were produced. Historians examined unit records, after-action reports, casualty lists. The full story of the Filthy 13 emerged not as legend, but as history. They were not the only unconventional unit in World War II. Other groups, Merrill's Marauders, the 1st Special Service Force, the SAS, also operated outside normal military structures, but the Filthy 13 became iconic because of those photographs, because their appearance matched their reputation. They looked like what people imagined warriors should look like. Savage, uncompromising, fearless, and they were. But they were also something more. They were men who understood that war strips away everything except what is essential: courage, loyalty, competence. Everything else, rank, regulations, appearance, is secondary. The military establishment never fully accepted this philosophy. Even today, armed forces emphasize discipline, hierarchy, uniformity. These things have value. They create cohesion. They enable large-scale operations. They maintain order. But the Filthy 13 remind us that excellence can exist on the margins, that misfits can be heroes, that the men who don't fit the mold might be exactly the men you need when the mission is impossible. Their story is preserved in museums, in archives, in the memories of their descendants. It is taught at military schools as an example of unconventional warfare. It is studied by historians as a case study in small unit effectiveness. And it is remembered by anyone who believes that courage and loyalty matter more than conformity. The Filthy 13 were not perfect. They were flawed, difficult, often their own worst enemies. But when it mattered, when the shooting started, when the bombs fell, when men were dying, they delivered. And that is their legacy. The story of the Filthy 13 is a reminder that history is never simple. They were heroes, yes, but complicated heroes. Men who defied authority yet served with honor. Men who looked like barbarians yet fought with precision. Men who broke every rule except the ones that mattered. They were sons and brothers and friends. They were tough and funny and scared and brave. They were human dots, and they fought in a war that demanded everything from them. They watched friends die. They endured cold and hunger and fear. They carried wounds, physical and psychological, that never fully healed. But they kept fighting, because the mission mattered, because their brothers beside them mattered, because surrender was not an option. This is what we owe them: remembrance, not sanitized myths, not Hollywood fantasies, but the real story, messy, complicated, true. The story of men who shaved mohawks before jumping into the darkness, who painted their faces and laughed at death, who fought across France and Holland and Belgium, who froze in the forests of Bastogne and refused to quit. The story of the Filthy 13. If this documentary has moved you, if you've learned something you didn't know, if you believe these stories deserve to be preserved, then help us continue this work. Like this video, share it with someone who loves history. Leave a comment about what struck you, what surprised you, what you'll remember. And subscribe to this channel, because there are more stories to tell, more forgotten heroes, more complex truths behind familiar legends. World War II was fought by millions of people, but we remember only a few. The rest fade into archives and old photographs and statistics. The Filthy 13 almost faded too, but their story survived, because people cared enough to preserve it, to research it, to share it. Now that story is yours. Pass it on. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering. And may we never forget the price of the freedom we inherited.